Call to order. Good morning and welcome to the January 12th meeting of the council. My name is Pam Weegan and I am the chair of the council. I want to pass on a bit of information regarding how we will conduct our meeting on Zoom. If visual aids are used during the meeting, the presenter will share their screen with the call. Participants and attendees will need a computer, smartphone, or tablet to view the screen. All attendees will be entered into the meeting with their audio muted. Please turn on video if you have it and type your name in the box. Presenters will be unmuted when their agenda items come up. We ask that all members and presenters use good conference call etiquette and mute their line when they are not speaking. Please identify yourself each time you speak. If you have a public comment during the public comment section of the agenda, please use the raise your hand function on Zoom and staff will call upon you and unmute you. The county reserves the right to shut off the microphone and remove any speaker from the meeting if they are inappropriate. The chat function has been disabled, although I think it is actually working. A recording of this meeting will be available to the CJCC website after each meeting. Our first item of business is the minutes, which are available on the CJCC website hub. We want to introduce new officers, and I think the best way to do the new thing is I'm going to introduce myself and then I'm going to call upon another member since it's really hard to tell where everybody's located on each other's screens. Again, I'm Pam Weegan, I'm the chair of the council. Mike, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hey, good morning. Mike Brower, the Criminal Justice Coordinator.
Would you call on the next person, Mike?
Yes, I will. Commissioner Ananda.
I'm Jennifer Ananda. I am chair of the Racial and Ethnic Disparities Work Group currently, and I am a Lawrence City Commissioner. And I will call on Lori.
Good morning, everyone. Lori Alvarado. I'm the CEO at DECA. Let's hear from Matt.
Hi, everyone. I'm Matt Cravens. I'm the data analyst for the CJCC in Douglas County. I will call on Shay Downing.
Hello, I'm Shay Downing. I am a criminal defense attorney. I will call on Chuck.
Thank you, Shay. I'm Chuck Epp. I'm a member at large and a member of the Racial Disparities and Data Working Group. And I'll call on Darren.
Hi, Darren Kennedy, he, him, his pronouns. I'm a community member of the council and professor at KU. I will popcorn over to Bob Transky.
Hello, everyone. Bob Transky, Director of Behavioral Health Projects for Douglas County. I will call on District Attorney Valdez.
Hi, everyone. I am Suzanne Valdez. My pronouns are she, her. I have been on the job for one day and I haven't messed things up. So I'm excited to join this council and I'll be talking to you a little bit later. And I will call on Sheriff Armbrister.
Thank you, Suzanne. I'm Jay Armbrister, newly elected Sheriff of Douglas County. I've also been on the job for one day and haven't screwed it up, but the day ain't over.
You're going to call on Jay.
Under Sheriff Stacy Simmons, please.
Hi, Under Sheriff Stacy Simmons. We've been on like about a day and a couple hours, so things are looking good so far. I'm also on the Alternatives to Incarceration subcommittee. Let's see who's left. Judge McCabria.
Jim McCabria. I'm the chief judge of the district court here, and I've been on the job for a little over a year, and I've probably screwed plenty of things up, but overall we're running okay. And let's see, Judge Miller.
I'm Scott Miller. I'm the municipal court judge for the city of Lawrence. And let's see, Patrick, you're next.
And Patrick Schmitz, a CEO here at Burt Nash Center, and I will call on Anthony Frixis.
Anthony Rixis, I'm the interim chief in Lawrence, and I will call Mike Patrick. Hi, Mike Patrick from Valdez City Police Department, Chief of Police here. And I will call on Sarah Plinsky.
Thanks, Chief. I'm Sarah Plinsky. I'm the Douglas County Administrator. And I have not necessarily been paying excellent attention to who has been called and not been called, but I don't think Carrie Nice has been called. Has she?
Carrie Nice, the reentry director out here at the Douglas County Jail. Is there anybody who hasn't been called? Raise your hand or wave at me, or are we done? Chris, call on you.
All right. Hi, Chris Carey, Chief of Police, KU. And I'll call on Craig Owens. I don't think he got called.
Thanks. It's reminding me of like not being picked for kickball, but I'm Craig Owens, Lawrence City Manager, and I'm pleased to call Carrie Britt.
Hi, I'm Carrie Britt. I'm the communications specialist for Douglas County, and I'm responsible for recording these meetings. And I'll pick on, I don't know if Shay Downing went. Did I miss that?
I think Josh is the only one. Josh and Gary.
Josh and Gary.
I'll go ahead and go. Josh Seiden, Deputy District Attorney, and I started yesterday with Suzanne. And I will go to Gary.
Gary Bunting, Douglas County Sheriff's Office, currently assigned as the jail administrator.
That's great. Thank you, everyone. We're going to move to Suzanne Valdez and her staff to do a presentation on the District Attorney's Office.
Good morning, everyone, again. I noticed that Josh is on, and Josh, your sound is terrible. I'm not sure what's going on in your office just down a ways there, but maybe you can, it sounded kind of muffled. I'll have him talk in just a second, and then Dave Melton was supposed to join me as well. I don't see him on the call. He may have gotten tied up on something. So I just thought I'd take a quick moment just to kind of give you an update on where I'm at, I guess where I've been actually in the last 4 months and one day, I guess, officially on the job. But first of all, I just want to tell everyone I am so honored to be a part of the this particular council, and certainly honored to serve as you know, on our team of prosecutors in the District Attorney's Office. So thank you for having me, and I look forward to the work that we all get to do together. So yesterday I was sworn in along with deputies Dave Melton and Josh Seiden. I'll talk a little bit quickly about kind of our new structure. We've done a reorganization, but all of our ADAs were also sworn in yesterday by Judge McCabria, who I think he administered the oath at least, I don't know, 500 times and did it so well. So thank you for doing that, Judge McCabria. And we've continued sort of flawlessly, I would say, the transition of the office in terms of what we're doing, what the office was doing. And there was just a few hiccups, but honestly, the transition went really, really smoothly. I'm really proud of the team of prosecutors and staff and office. I mean, we're one big team here in the DA's office that we have put together here. We've got a fantastic team of very dedicated public servants. We've done our first wave of hiring, brought in 4 new lawyers. Josh Seiden as a deputy will be talking about his piece of responsibility. And so he's obviously a new hire. John Simpson, who is going to do appellate work and also support our trial teams and also be assigned to some special other projects. He comes to us from having 3 or 4 different clerkships with federal judges and state judges, and he's fantastic. Great legal mind. I think he's going to help a lot with a lot of the work that we're doing here, obviously. Emma Halling will join us actually at the end of the month. She's actually currently clerking for Supreme Court Justice Wall, and he couldn't let her go for a couple weeks. And so I think that speaks volumes of the quality of an attorney she is and will be for our office. She'll also do part of the appellate work and then support our trial teams as well, which I'll explain. And then last but not least, on the prosecutor front, Emily Hartz, who is from our community, just a very, very well-trained lawyer in terms of her ethics and her trauma-informed response and client-centric way of practice is going to be invaluable with our SVU, which we have created. So we've got 4 lawyers that have been onboarded, including myself. That's 5. We're going to do a second wave of interviews to bring in a few more prosecutors. We're probably about 3 or 4 down, depending on whether we bring in new people or experienced lawyers. So we are lean but mean. We're going to make sure that we hire nothing but the best and the most qualified and certainly ethical prosecutors that we can get. And that's going to be part of our mentoring program in terms of making sure that that's the kind of work that we do. I've reached out in the last 4 months or so. I want to give a shout out to Josh Seiden, who literally from the defense side, once I brought him on my team in August, conflicted him, basically shut down his private practice so that he could work for my transition. He did it for free. I'm eternally grateful for him. And obviously he's part of the team now, but he's been doing a lot of the behind the scenes work and trying to get community collaboration and law enforcement collaboration along with myself to come up with working groups for various things that we need to work on to advance criminal justice reform. Of very, very big importance is our Brady Giglio policy that we need to unveil sooner rather than later. So Josh has led up that working group with law enforcement. I think it's been a great working group. We want to get input from law enforcement, make sure that we're working all on the same page. At some point, we will also get input from other stakeholders and that sort of thing, including defense bar, so they understand how it works. And we'll get that unrolled as soon as possible. We have a SVU, like I talked about, which is our special victims unit, and Emily Hartz is heading that up. LPD also, and I don't want to take the air out of that balloon because it's a fantastic balloon, but they've created their own SVU, and we're going to be working on collaborating with the LPD and other law enforcement agencies to ensure that we have a trauma-informed response to our special victims. In terms of our organization, which is really a reorganization, I still don't see Dave Melton on the call, so I'll just talk a little bit about what his line of responsibility is, and then I'll turn it over to Josh. I don't want to talk too long, but essentially what we've done here in the last 4 months is we talked with everyone in the DA's office. We spent lots of time with the folks here, trying to get a sense of what everyone was doing, trying to figure out if we could do it better, if we could do it more efficiently. And I think we've come up with a really good reorganization where we're going to have trial teams. It's going to be under Dave Melton's jurisdiction, if you will, for what he does. There will be 2 trial teams, essentially, that are composed of very senior level, well-trained prosecutors, mid-level prosecutors, and then of course, new lawyers as they come in are onboarded to make sure that we have mentorship and we have, that we're all working together on a team approach. And these teams will do all the work in the various divisions here in the courthouse. So we're straying away from the division attorneys. The division attorneys really were just sort of silos. That's kind of how we saw it. There wasn't a lot of collaboration between the lawyers. And when you don't have that collaboration, what ends up happening is we have prosecutors sort of doing their own thing without any really sort of team approach. So that's kind of our team system for the prosecution of cases and handling all of the work that's going into the court system. Josh, who I'm going to defer to in just a second for chiming in, is really going to be leading up all of our alternative programs, alternatives to incarceration, our SVU. And he is fantastic at just being very people focused, trying to come up with making ideas and policies and all those things that will help us really keep people out of the criminal justice system. And then, of course, we can focus better, use those resources to prosecute those cases that we need to. One last thing I will say before turning it over to Josh, actually 2 things. One is we are going to be unveiling diversion program that is fantastic, and that we've been working with Pam Weegan and her group with adult services. So she's nodding her head because I think Josh, I know, has been very instrumental in getting that worked out. So we're very excited about unveiling it. As soon as we get all the bells and whistles on it, we'll let you know how we think it can work. The last thing I will say before turning it over to Josh is that this office is really a team of people working together. And that's the approach that I have taken. So there's lots of collaboration between Josh and Dave and I. They have a lot of authority, and all of that is trickling down to the prosecutors, and we're all working together as a team with law enforcement to come up with policies and procedures that are progressive, that keep our community safe. And we want to hear from you. We want to hear all of your input. We want to hear criticisms. We want to hear good things, bad things, because that's the only way that we can make things better for our community. So please, I encourage you to reach out to any of us, all of us, let us know. I'm willing to try lots of good ideas. We have lots of good ideas in the pipeline, not only from our own prosecutors, but from law enforcement and community stakeholders. We want to try those ideas. If those ideas don't work, then we'll figure something else out. So I'm not afraid to try something new. And certainly either is our office, and we ask for your input and your grace and all of that goes into what we're doing here, which is really important for our community. So I'm going to go ahead and let Josh speak about what I think is really important to this group, which is alternatives to incarceration in our unit there. Unless anyone has any questions, I'm not sure if I can ask that yet, but I'm always open for questions and comments and all of that.
All right, I guess I'll go ahead. Is my sound okay now? Okay, so I'm Josh Seiden, Deputy District Attorney. I had joined with Suzanne yesterday, and my primary responsibility will be the Alternatives to Incarceration unit. And this is a new initiative where what we're going to do is take all of the alternative programs and just sort of house them under one umbrella as far as our involvement in this goes. So of the existing programs, you're going to have behavioral health court, drug court, and the women's diversion program, the standard diversion program, and then we're also going to have the new enhanced diversion program. Oh. You want to come to my office?
Yeah, or Josh, if you're the 913 number, we can promote that number over, and you could, if that's, is that you?
I'm going to have them come into my office.
Okay.
There you go. Have a seat.
Oh, thank you.
Yep.
Let's see here. I guess. Or are you? Okay.
Yep.
All right. So, okay. Can people hear me now?
Much better.
Okay. Sorry about that. So, it wouldn't be a true first week if I couldn't get my technology to work. So, I'm on Suzanne's computer now. She's kind enough to let me use it. So, what we'll be doing here is I will be primarily in charge of the thank you, the Alternatives to Incarceration unit. It's a new initiative that we have going on here, and that will house under one umbrella. It will house the behavioral health court, drug court, women's diversion program, It will also have the standard diversion program, which has been in place for a while, will go in there, and the new enhanced diversion program that we're working on with Pam and her staff. And so essentially what we're going to have here with the Alternatives to Incarceration unit is we're taking an approach. It is going to be a very people-centric, people-focused approach where we want the public to know that consistent with what Suzanne is doing in the office is we're investing in people. That starts in here. Suzanne has invested in what she believes is the best staff to handle these type of matters. And we want the applicants and participants in these programs to know that we're truly investing in people. We believe that that's important to the community, that we help people, we help facilitate people getting into the services that they need, because these are folks that are going to be in the community one way or another. They're going to be back in the community before too long. So if we can help them give them the intervention that they need, we believe that's sort of a twofold benefit there. It helps get people in the services that they need so that they're able to function in the community better. And then it also, Suzanne had mentioned, it will help us spare the prosecutorial resources for the type of offenses that we really need to go after to keep the public safe. So we're excited about this new programming. We've been talking about the concepts for a while. We've been working with different agencies and staff, just talking with people and working things out. So we want to get these things rolling as soon as possible. Behavioral health court and drug court are already going on. And what we're doing now is identifying the potential participants for some of the newer programming. And so we're excited to do this. We look forward to collaborating with everyone. We just ask that you please have a little patience with us. We'll get there. As we saw with my computer microphone situation, we kind of have to act on the fly sometimes. But we're excited to be in here. Having worked with Suzanne on these things since back in August, it's nice to finally be in here. And I look forward to working with all of you. And thank you for having us today. And I would go ahead and pass over to Dave Melton now. I believe he's connected and he can talk about what he's going to be doing.
Here we go. Sorry about that. I think I was in the waiting room for a while, but I heard everything that Suzanne said. She covered just about everything that I was going to talk about, but most of you know me. For those of you who don't, my name's Dave Melton. I'm one of Suzanne's two deputies. I've been employed here since 2005. I'm a 23-year prosecution veteran. I was a police officer before that. I'm in charge of the trial attorneys here, and on their behalf and on my behalf, I'd like to say that we're all very excited about a lot of the changes that are occurring and the changes that are going to come. So look forward to working with all of you.
Great. Does anybody have any questions for Suzanne and her staff?
I might have a quick question. Suzanne, this is probably a little bit more for you, but it could be for the deputies too. I know there's a ton of things that we have sort of carried over from last year that are going to continue. And I was just wondering, we had a discussion about a presentation on the potential for a public defender's office. I know that's not, it's very much connected, but also separate. And I know if that, if entering in part of that discussion is an interest of yours, if you or the staff have a reaction, a thought, or a response to what your thoughts on starting a public defender's office would be. That's just one thing that I know that I was curious about where it might land in
Sure.
this department.
Yeah, no, I think I can give you, one of the things about me that I hope everyone appreciates, I'm a straight shooter, very honest, sometimes brutally so. And so I will share with you whatever it is I know or what I'm thinking at the time. My thinking does evolve as it should, just because I think, we have to be open-minded. So with that as background, I have been listening into the CJCC meetings ever since I decided to run for office. So I've been I know exactly what you're talking about, Darren, and the conversations that I've had. In fact, I even watched that presentation by BIDS. And so I looked at the PowerPoint and all that. So, what I'll say on that is, just to sort of be clear, is that it's up to BIDS really, to kind of figure out whether we're appropriate for an office here. I do know that there's struggles even with the current public defender systems that do exist with keeping them staffed. There's a lot of turnover, so there's lots of pros and cons to having a public defender office. And so, what do we want to talk about it? Is it good for our community? It might be. I don't know. What I will say about our defense bar, and I say this from a perspective where I'm new, obviously, to being a prosecutor in this county, but I've prosecuted in Wyandotte County, and I know a lot of members of our local bar. Shay Downing is a fantastic defense lawyer. We've got many really good lawyers in this community who do fantastic work. Josh Seiden himself, was a fantastic defense lawyer. He did his job. And so, do we need one? Maybe we do, maybe we don't. And I think that one of the things that's certainly part of my philosophy is that, if something's going to affect someone's life, if a decision is going to make someone's life, they need to be brought to the table to be part of that discussion. So I think that the defense bar needs to be brought into this discussion. I think we need to have other people sort of talking about how this is going to affect their practice, how it's going to affect the system, whether it's something that's really going to work for us. Is there a different way that we could come about? I mean, our community is very small. When I say it's small, it's actually a great size. Because I have found just in working with law enforcement, everyone kind of does their own thing with these various agencies, but it's manageable where we can work with everyone and make things work. So is it possible to have a system that we have more of a cohesive group of defense bar? I mean, the panels are great. I think we have good people working, but can we do something that makes it better for them so that there's more collaboration on their end and that we have that kind of interface that works for the prosecution side? So I guess what I'm saying is it's not something I've completely dismissed. I think it's something we have to talk about. But let's bring the people to the table that it's going to affect, and let's have really those drilled down conversations about really some true numbers. Is something we really need for our community, and then we can talk. Then we can go forward. So certainly open-minded to it, but no position. And I did want to give a shout out to what I think is a very strong defense bar, especially the felony panel that works with our prosecutors on the very serious crimes.
Thank you. Any other questions for Suzanne and staff? Go ahead.
Even though now I guess I have almost a year under my belt, I'm still feeling like I'm sussing out kind of what CJCC can and can't do. So I'm sort of wondering, maybe this is given a presentation, Suzanne, is there anything? How do I want to say this? As opposed to like grilling you for questions, are there things that you would like CJCC to really kind of take up and be paying attention to? Because I think that we've had some discussions trying to figure out, what are some needs, and I think there are some places where we really kind of said, okay, we would love for to be thinking about how charging happens at the district attorney's office, but sort of wondering like, okay. As one of the linchpin contributors to the criminal justice system here, what can CJCC do from your perspective in this next year?
One thing that I really appreciate about this body, and like I said, I've been watching it since probably when I guess Zoom started and the pandemic hit, and then of course the election cycle started. So I was started to really pay attention and watched the webinar format. this council, I think, is really helpful to, it allows, all these community stakeholders to come together and talk about issues in a way that informs what we're thinking and what we want to do. So it seems like it may not be obvious to all of you as I see you all here on the screen, but everything that I've heard from CJCC in some form, the messaging is really strong coming from here that, these are our concerns. These are the things, whatever they are. There's the long list of things that you all have talked about is very lengthy and there's more to talk about. But just sitting in this kind of forum is helpful to us in our office because we hear it and then we can say, we need to act on that? Or is this something we can act on? Sometimes we have legal constraints. We've got statutes. We've got things in place that we just can't move the needle on that. But there's a lot that we can move the needle on. So it's really, I do want to give a shout out to you all because I think the work that you're doing is really important. And it may not seem, the fact that we have a new sheriff, we've got, a new DA, we're really thinking about, this is really sort of pushing the start button all over again. That says a lot about what this particular group has done to influence that. So yeah, and I'll bring stuff to you all if I wanted to. I guess I have to figure out too what my role is and what I can do. But I really want to be a part of this community, and please let me know if, it goes both ways, I guess. I hope that answers your question.
It does. It does. It does.
Those are all great questions. Does anybody else have any other questions? Or Darren, do you have another question? Well, Suzanne, Josh, and David, thanks so much. Moving on to our next agenda item, we have the Sheriff's Office, Sheriff Armbrister.
All right, thank you, Pam. Can everybody hear me all right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'm Jay Armbrister, and I've been attending when the meetings were still being held out at the Florida building, and I've been trying to tune in online. So I have a pretty good working understanding of what's going on with this body. And I look very much forward to working with it because I have a lot of priorities that I really think mesh with your goal, your purposes. So brief history. I started with the Sheriff's Office in 1998 as a jailer, making $19,000 a year. And so I've worked pretty much every facet of this agency. So I'm very well versed in most things that we do, if not all. Moving forward, I'll try to attend every meeting that I can, but Under Sheriff Simmons and Major Bunting, which I've restructured, we'll have one Under Sheriff and two majors, and Major Bunting will be basically the facility administrator for the jail. So the two of them will be leading the charge as far as our presence with this group. So, but I really wanted to kind of take a moment to talk about some of my priorities. And I know, when you're running for office, sometimes you have to say and talk about some things that may seem like priorities, but they just kind of get moved down the line. But I actually have a lot of stuff I really want to get done. And I'm a little worried that 4 years is not even close to enough time. But the main thing that we need to talk about is the jail, obviously. And I've worked in the jail from the bottom to the top. And as the jail, as I keep the jail now, it's become clear that as the sheriff, we deal typically with the results of the criminal justice system. And Sheriff McGovern was really good about beginning his work upstream as far as recidivism and programming and that kind of stuff, hiring Mike and just all these great things. And I want to only expand on all of that. And but when it comes to the housing of the inmates, I have some priorities that I want to do. Obviously, the expansion is not happening, and that's great. But the time has come, so I have to work backwards in order to work forwards here. When we talk about our facility, it's a 186 bed facility. Okay, so that's 186 beds, and we can hold 186 heads. But the functional capacity of our facility, depending on the makeup of our inmate population, ranges, in my opinion, from 130 upwards to 150-ish. And without getting off in the weeds too deep, that's basically because we have units that have open air dormitory style. Everybody's in one big room type of sleeping arrangements, whereas we have inmates that can't function in an environment like that, so they can't occupy those beds. So we have a bed, but we have inmates who just can't occupy them. So what my priorities are going to be moving forward is kind of a reallocation of spaces within our current facility to move away from some of what seemed like great ideas at the time in 2000 when we opened the facility, to really move towards having a more functional capacity, and therefore that will really alleviate the stress on our population as well as our staff and our building itself. So obviously, and I'm going to talk quite a bit about our work release program here in just a second, but I'll hold that for a second. But especially with the pandemic, we've really learned that we need some sort of a quarantine system / unit, as well as a pre-classification place for people to, when they're booked in and they're going to be staying for any amount of time, it's kind of a staging place to house them and see what it is that what best fits them and what best fits us. But also, and now in a pandemic, we need some place that we can quarantine people, that have air exchangers and have all the facilities and everything that we need to do safe, secure, and humane. So that'll be something that I'm going to be working towards. Obviously, I want to stay within the footprint of the building. And of course, I would never, in fact, our jail population, our bed would actually decrease. We would go from 186 down to something else, because I have a feeling if we do this the way I intend it, we will lose beds. However, our functionality will go way up. So, and if you have any questions, I'm all about it, trying to educate and explain, because sometimes I kind of talk in circles and get lost in the weeds. But and then also we need to look into something that's always bothered me, is the treatment of our female inmates. And I'm not trying to say that it's inhumane or anything. It's flat unfair. A male inmate who has been classified as a minimum gets upwards of 10, 12, 14 hours a day out of their cell to watch TV and talk on the phone and do whatever. Our female inmates, just simply because of the way we have to house the classifications, they could get 3, maybe 4 hours a day out. And it just is kind of it goes back to, what I learned in grade school, is that's just not fair. So I want to look at how we can maybe move some things around, change some things, but that's all staying within our parameters that I'm talking about. So, and then as far as the work release unit goes, what I'd really like to do is move away from the jail ever housing work release again. And I know that's kind of a bold statement, but I just really feel like with the abilities of GPS monitoring and all of that kind of stuff, there's really, there needs to be a different way for us to look at work release. And so whether that be through some sort of a civilian run housing type situation outside of the building, I just really feel like there's better ways to operate it. Plus, the way that work release is set up, people can just come in for hours at a time and go back out and work their 3 jobs, and then come back in for a few hours, eat a meal, and then go back out to work. And I mean, let's face it, that's just not jail. And work release also presents security issues as far as bringing in a contraband from the outside. It's our one portal to the outside world. And so, not that we've had a lot of stuff come in, but it's happened. And we had an escape years ago, and it was through the work release door. So there's just a lot of things. However, obviously that is the people who are sentenced to work release are, I don't sentence anybody to work release. So it's something that I know that I will have to work with other members of the judicial system as well. So I'm here to do it, and I want to talk about it, and I want to get it out and open. But also that the work release housing is a huge, big pod that I could reallocate for something much more efficient and much better for what we as a jail could utilize. So that's kind of my Nichols tour on my jail priorities. These are very big and grand moves, and I've been talking with a lot of the folks who will be parts of these discussions and projects. So the ball is rolling, but it's going to take time and patience, and I'll be leaning on many of you for guidance. And then really the other ones that are that are kind of near and dear to the work that you all do is a co-responder unit. I have, again, once this huge, big, grand, overarching plan where I would love to see kind of a campus built in the jail on the property that houses the jail right now, and encompass the community shelter into that as well. And I've already spoken with Renee, and I want to, I mean, this is a huge, big deal, but I would like to see the formation of a new agency, a county-run agency that has mental health specialists, housing specialists, domestic violence specialists, and care and treatment people, but also utilize the community shelter itself with, you know, because they're doing all the little tiny houses and all that stuff, to begin working as a transition housing for people who leave my facility who maybe don't have an address to go and stay and live and work, and get them there, but also have people that are in this agency and in this group who can help these folks get to court, get to doctor's appointments, get to and from work, help them learn how to balance checkbooks. I mean, just help them ease back out into the world, and hopefully that'll keep them from coming back into our jail. And along with also housing a community shelter. So I think that this is a grand, huge, big plan that is probably like a 10 or 15 year idea, but you can't, it's like, I tell everybody, it's kind of like planting apple trees. I'll never eat an apple off of that tree. My kids will. But if you don't plant it now, your kids don't get any apples. So I'm ready to try to do some of these hard things and look at some of these big kind of crazy ideas, if you will. The other thing is I'd really like to figure out something about our drug court and drug systems. Obviously, the newspaper article about us doing away with our DEU, our drug enforcement unit. We're going to have a unit, but it's going to be just a little bit different business model. But also, I'd like to see something, and I've spoken with DA Valdez, and I want to work with her and figure out if there's some way that we can try to get folks through the drug court where they don't have to walk out with a conviction on their record. But again, this is totally not in my lane, but it's just something that I want to try to work towards and advocate for. But also, Stacy, or sorry, Under Sheriff Simmons and I have some programs that we want to look into bringing here. And I would love to offer them to you to look into as well, and give me your feedback. But the first one is called the Cahoots, which is a crisis assistance helping out on the streets, but it's in Eugene, Oregon, which is where Oregon University is. So it's a similar in size, similar makeup of our county, and that's their co-responder unit. And the way that it's working, it just seems to be pretty fabulous, and it's a standalone entity. But also the East Coast has had a lot of what they call the Angel program, where drug addicted folks can come to the police, which I know is counterintuitive, but get the help they need. It's basically no judgment, no questions asked. We bring them in and get them to the treatment and try to help them get their lives back on track. Longmont, Colorado has this program, and Stacy has a very good contact in Longmont. So we will be making a trip out there to look at everything that they have to offer. So I think I've made it to the end of all of my notes, and I've talked for a long time without breathing a whole lot, but does anybody have any questions or anything? Wow. Well, does that mean oh, thank you, Chuck. I mean, made me think I had done everything correctly.
So the list of proposals that you've just gone through is really, really very interesting. And I know of many of these from research on them or our commentary about them in other places. It's quite exciting, actually. I hope you'll keep us in mind as a group to provide help in some ways, if that's possible, on these initiatives. As you say, they will be big projects, and the CJCC has been working on similar kinds of ideas in the past, but on not precisely these. I'm especially excited about the idea that there might be a transition from jail program that continues outside of the jail in a really robust way. I think that's really a valuable proposal. The others are as well. I'm not discounting them, but that's a big one. And if we can help in some way, I think I can't speak for the rest of the group, but I think we would be interested in doing so.
Yeah, and I bring those things to you all knowing that this is your proverbial wheelhouse. I mean, this is what you all are here to do. And so therefore I want to have you be a part of it from the beginning all the way through. If I could only do a third of the things I just talked about in 4 or 8 years, it would actually, I think, would be impressive. And I'm not saying we'll even be able to get to those, but right now I'm still fresh faced and I'm not ruined yet. So I think we can do all of them. But that's why I wanted to come to you all. And I know that this is going to create a lot of conversations and a lot of hard work, but in talking about transitioning outside of the jail for programming stuff, I will say this, and this is the thing that costs money. It's going to cost us money in that I feel like there needs to be an agency built, because while I love our nonprofits and I love all of the volunteer work that we do, I just feel like this is too important to count on grant funding, volunteer signups, or nonprofits, because they're already maxed out in what they can and can't do. And I want these folks to have all of the security in their job that allows them to go out and do the good work. And I just feel like that's the right way to do it, that this community has decided that this is where we want to invest our resources. And so therefore, I think it's time that we as a community kind of put our money where our mouth is as far as investing in those programs and the community. Hi, Darren.
Hey, I just want to make sure that I'm catching the vision. When you say an agency, I'm wondering, and I know this is imagining, so I'm rolling with you there. But what is the charge of that agency, and who are its constituents? What are you?
Okay, and I'll tell you this right now. The sheriff of Douglas County does not want to run that agency. I want absolutely nothing to do with it, because I am not an expert in that field. So my vision is, and again, we're talking about visions and thoughts, is that it would be operated. So you look at all the good work that Renee does out at the community shelter already. She's trying to house people in the community, house families. She's trying to get people in out of the cold. So therefore, Renee would be someone who could oversee the branch of this agency, which would work on community housing and housing issues. And then you would have some other, a section also that all work together, but then there would be like this drug addiction and counseling and resources person who specifically deals in drug addiction and rehab and treatment. And then you would have somebody else that has this, but they also have their own folks. But I mean, I don't know if you would call the county the Douglas County Community Supported, I don't even know, but it would be made up of people who have salaries, who have benefits, and have job security, but they also have the knowledge to go out into our community and do the work that they specialize in doing.
Not to step on Sheriff Armbrister, but maybe just to clarify, Darren, a little bit. We have had numerous conversations with the incoming sheriff about some of these initiatives. This is an exciting time at county government. Some of that work we already have underway at the behavioral health campus in terms of our efforts with DECA and the crisis center. But I think Sheriff Armbrister really has a vision for how we can even extend that work further. And when we talk about agency, I think the Douglas County, the county has positioned itself to be really a leader and a strategist in this field, in this area. So I think this is some of the next evolutions of some of the work we've been doing here at the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council and the Behavioral Health Leadership Council to really provide enhanced services in our community. So I'm really excited about Sheriff Armbrister's vision for what we have ahead of us. And I look forward to working with this group as well as the Board of County Commissioners to further realize some of those thoughts and ideas.
Yeah, what Sarah said.
And Jay, I would add that if you need some assistance in getting the word out with the criminal defense bar, I'd be happy to help you. I think all of us would agree that some of our most successful clients, and that they have not returned, have been those who have worked with the reentry program that was there at the jail and had a plan when they came out. So, and I yell a lot about the women's pod at the jail, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, and Shay, I mean, just through my years of experience and within the system, I mean, obviously you and several others have have a place where I know that I can just have those conversations and get the straight answer as opposed to what I want to hear. So yeah, you'll definitely be hearing from me.
Sheriff, I appreciate your time. And as a nonprofit, I'm going to speak to some of the work that we've done, but I would appreciate hearing more about your plans, as we definitely want to be a partner and want to enhance what's going on. And be careful that we're not duplicating services as some of these things start, because there are some things going on that we'd love to share with you. And also hear from you about where you're headed so that we can align services and make sure that some of the county money already coming to some of us nonprofits is being spent in a great way, is spent in a way that gets us to those goals that our whole community have. So I look forward to conversations with you specifically about some of the things that you want to do, because we're already right there in your facility, and also working with people who are leaving the jail. So I'm really excited to hear some more about what you might have in your head.
Okay. I look forward to it.
This is Patrick Schmitz. I agree with what Lori said. So looking forward to talking more about this.
Right, and the county, and especially the jail and sheriff's office relationship with DECA and Burt Nash is as strong as it's ever been, and especially the ladies and the gentlemen that work out at the facility. We communicate quite a bit, and I trust everything they do and say. So yeah, we're in great shape.
Do we have any more questions for the sheriff? Seeing none, I'll move on to our next agenda item, which is the District Court Judge James McCabria.
Okay, well, my presentation is going to be pretty modest in terms of imagination for the future. Mike asked me to just sort of update folks on how the court has been running, what changes we've made, and what we're anticipating just operational wise for the future. So there's the civil side, which I know isn't the focus here, but I'll just give the general comment that on the civil side, because we are using Zoom, because we are operating way better than I expected that whole process would run, I think we're doing great on the civil side. I've got some prepared comments and some feedback from the other judges on the criminal side, but honestly, Shay, if you don't mind me putting you on the spot, and I wouldn't put many people on the spot and expect them to speak plainly on what their impressions are, but I'd love to hear what, at least from your perspective as a defense attorney, how cases are moving, how the dockets are working, because overall, I'll just, spoiler alert, say mostly positive. We've gotten very little criticism, but I thought I would not miss this opportunity to ask Shay to offer some thoughts for the benefit of the council if she's comfortable. If not, that's fine.
Me not comfortable sharing my thoughts, I don't think that has ever happened. What I would say is, for the most part, I think the Zoom process, especially for dockets, has been helpful. Sometimes it can be complicated because the dockets overlap a little bit, but I think all of the judges have made an effort to try to streamline and minimize the amount of times that we have to appear in court for the docket. So I think that those are working well. The hangups in terms of the timeline is obviously because those cases that cannot be resolved without a trial aren't moving, then all of our workloads are kind of continuing to just stack up. But I don't know that there's much we can do about that, short of what we're trying to do, which is come up with alternative plans to get a trial going. And frankly, everybody is nervous about what that's going to look like. Everybody's nervous about what a jury pool would look like, whether or not people will really be comfortable, or if they will be rushing to try to get through it because they're concerned about other things. But for the most part, I think having the cases move at least somewhat with Zoom and the ability to do it that way are good. There are some challenges, obviously, especially when you have cases where, I don't want to go into too much detail, but when you have cases where the identity of the defendant is at issue, Zoom presents a very strange problem. I mean, you have the defendant identified by name, and they've gotten a subpoena with the defendant's name on it. So he or she is not real hard to identify. But other than that, I think that everybody is really trying to do their best to make sure it's streamlined. And
Yeah, great. Thank you, Shay. I appreciate that input. So I presently don't carry a full criminal load any further with our case reorganization. We consolidated into 4 divisions. I think, consistent with what Shay has said, that the dockets have converted to status only. And so we're not handling substantive matters at those dockets, which frees up the court and the attorneys the ability to just sort of review a lot of cases within hopefully that hour time. I've been hearing that it didn't start out easy to fit things within an hour, and it's not always happening within an hour, but everybody's sort of catching on to the way it works best, and that's been working pretty well. The feedback that I'm getting is for preliminary hearings, when they need to be held in person, they're being held in person, and when they're amenable to another format, we're able to accommodate that as well. The big issue that's been somewhat in the paper, I guess, is we had announced that we were going to start jury trials in January. I will just say that all of the surrounding counties, the federal courts, all have much later start dates than that. And when we announced in December that we were going to have a schedule starting in January, we announced at that same time that we would be reassessing whether that would make sense given where we were in the COVID environment to make that decision. When the judges met, it was a lot of factors went into the discussion. I think all of the defense bar, all of the prosecutors appreciate the reality that until you set something for trial, it's harder to get resolutions because that's sort of the end point at which, it's fish or cut bait. That's probably not the most sophisticated way to say it, but people have to make final decisions at that point. Many of the cases that were set for trial in January had reached resolution. The first one that was set, there were factors that we discussed about what true interests of justice would be served by proceeding on that case versus taking that case off the docket. There were a couple at the end of the month that the judges had been told would now be resolved, and others entered pleas, and others got resolutions that boiled it down to here we are 2 weeks after the holidays when we don't know what the COVID numbers may do after the behaviors that people are prone to engage in during the holidays. So the decision was made to take the January trials that remained, and really there was only one that we expect will actually may actually go. And I guess this is something to give perspective to a dynamic that I think plays into a lot of questions that people ask about when it comes to jail population. There's a wide spectrum of people who are in the jail at any given time. Some people who have never been in trouble with the law before, some people who have extensive criminal histories, people who may be serving a short sentence, but people who are in custody awaiting trial, knowing that if they are found guilty, they'll be facing a substantial sentence at KDOC. That affects everybody's decision-making who's in the jail about how they want to proceed. The case that I'm talking about that was set first, the individual has some rather substantial charges that they'll be facing a trial on that's already scheduled. The trial that was set was really picked because it was presumed it was going to be a fairly straightforward, short, low-level drug case that would be a good one to start with. And when we get down to analyzing, what's the value of going forward on that particular case in this COVID setting, whatever the risk factors are, and we know that there's these other considerations, in the same way that somebody outside might say, why is that person not wanting to proceed to trial in the soonest fashion possible? They might look at why the court made a decision. Why didn't the courts go ahead and proceed with the jury trial schedule that they had? there's just those factors that the participants in the system, everybody values justice, everybody values efficiency, and then you get into the particulars of any case, and that was the decision that we made. After we made that decision, I talked with Sarah Plinsky about getting some more input and information on COVID numbers. We're going to schedule that so that we can make that decision effectively. We issued a higher number of summons for people to come in for jury for January. We did that for two reasons. One, we expected there would be a higher rate of folks who wanted to be excused due to COVID concerns. And two, I wanted the biggest possible pool of summons to go out that we could rationally justify to get as much feedback as possible from the community. And what I can say is the qualification rate, that is, after we consider people who are making requests to be excused from jury duty, after we consider other reasons why we might allow people to be removed, there might be reasons that they won't otherwise qualify. We call that our qualification rate. Our qualification rate from all of the summons that we sent out was around 18%. 18 to 21% is our sort of a normal range that we would expect. And so, you know, the chief judge makes the decision whenever there's a request to be excused from jury service, and the reasons given. Certainly there were concerns from people who were anxious about serving because of exposing themselves to COVID. But the vast majority of COVID-related requests had to do with the type of work that the person did, and they didn't want to be a source of high-risk exposure. They might work in the medical field, and the demands on their job there, and then the risks that that would bring to the setting, or people who had family members who were at high risk that they wanted to be able to give attention to those people. So I just offer that for the idea that my overall sense is there is and I certainly didn't do any sort of formal analysis, but when you looked at the pool that got qualified, I didn't notice that an extra high number of elderly folks got excluded from the qualified panel. I didn't notice anything demographically that stood out to me. There may be those things, but I guess getting that feedback from the jury summons is a factor that will weigh into, okay, when we get to February, if that's the sort of pulse that we read from the community off of the pool that we summonsed in January, unless something turns, we should expect that at least that many people and at least that sort of normal range of folks are going to be willing to report if they have to for jury service. So that's what I can tell you about some more of the factors than what we put out for the paper. It's true that we looked at the rolling numbers that the health department puts out and tried to be as objective as possible, but there were all those things that go into it as well. If we go in February, we will still be one of the districts, as far as I know, the soonest to start back. We won't do it if we feel that there are safety concerns, but our aspiration is we believe we can start in February. And so, what I will say is on the civil side, I feel like we're basically full operational capacity, and on the criminal side, but for the challenges of getting to jury trial, between the changes that we made to how dockets are called and the consolidation among divisions who focus on criminal cases, and my overall impression is we're moving pretty well. And when I talk to chief judges in other districts, I have the same sense that we're doing as well as any other district that I've talked to in terms of how we're managing that case flow. And I don't think, I don't know what I would point at to say that anything the district court is doing is having a statistical impact, either at the jail population or downstream when we talk about how cases are getting resolved. So that's what I can report. And I'm glad to answer any questions from anything I've said or anything you've heard in the community or anything else.
I just would like to take this opportunity to really thank Judge McCabria for the work of his team and all the district court judges. This is, we say it too much, it's an unprecedented time, but the considerations that go into trying to decide how we proceed with criminal jury trials, I know have been really difficult for all of us, because it is part of our system. And so when you have a piece of the system that isn't operating, there are impacts on that system. And I would also want to take this opportunity to like really just thank how quickly the court has pivoted to video appearance and the bar as well. But really, we've made tremendous progress to do some things online and over video that we really hadn't been able to do until COVID. And so that pivoting happened really fast. And I know there's a ton of people behind the scenes that are not on these calls that have worked really their tails off to make those kinds of things happen. And so, my thanks to the district court and to the bar and to the DA's office to continue to help us meet these challenges that impact our entire criminal justice system.
Appreciation to the bar for sure. I think people have worked really hard to adapt, and I know the challenges of maintaining client contact in these times are difficult. So
I would just add for context that I know in Shawnee County and I think Johnson County, they're not scheduling trials till April. That's the earliest date they're giving out. So I think it's just important to recognize that we have, especially our clients who are in custody, have real concerns about, the fact that speedy trial is not really being counted and they can't really interact with their family because of COVID. So it is adding extra pressures there, but I think everybody's doing the best they can to get it moving.
Sorry, I have a question that's a little bit back to something else that you had said. So I don't know if other people have questions about the trials. I was just wondering that with the Zoom, with video conferencing, if there's been any discussion among the courts about if there's any of the changes that have come about because of COVID that you want to keep, and if there have been any issues with access around that as well. It does sound as if you're saying that actually in certain ways there have been some efficiencies that have been developed, and I don't know if that's something that then you're saying actually there are some things that we've done that I want to make permanent for the courts, or if it's like, no, I don't ever want to operate a court this way.
Oh no, it's a little bit selfishly, I've been an advocate for expanding remote appearance capability in the courts, civil and criminal, for a long time. I think, but the reality is, since we've made those changes, I haven't carried a criminal load. So it's frustrating for me to not experience it firsthand. But all of the feedback I'm getting from the judges, frankly, from the majority of the bar, and just from my own past criminal defense experience of knowing that the challenges that people face with work and travel opportunities and expenses and just keeping their life together, having the ability to appear remotely, I think is a tremendous value in the right setting for the right type of hearing. Those hearings are necessary, but by and large, I hope that we continue to take advantage of what we've learned through being able to have remote appearances. That's also been part of the probation officers have taken advantage of remote monitoring. So I think that's something that has tremendous value, and we continue in the future. On the civil side, same thing. I frankly, I've had attorneys, and there's certain types of hearings where I actually prefer the Zoom hearings over the live appearances for personal reasons. Sometimes it's easier to focus, and I think people focus more when they're presenting in that format. So no, there's humongous benefits to the criminal legal system that I hope carry forward from lessons learned during this time frame. And I don't know if Shay, as a defense attorney, has any comment on that question. I don't want to.
I think that if there was a move to not allow Zoom hearings for these status things afterwards, that there would be a strong objection by most people. I mean, it's so time consuming to have to spend an entire day to show up for your client's 5 or 10 minute scheduling issue. So I think that there are parts that should continue past this.
I will add, just so people know, we're able to do that by virtue of the Supreme Court changing a rule that really restricted it. And about the time COVID came about, I had agreed to be on a committee to push for remote appearances, a committee of judges to lobby the Supreme Court to change. And so I'm still hearing voices that once COVID's over, we need to go back to the old way. Well, so I guess some people hold that view. I believe the majority will persuade the Supreme Court to allow it to continue, but ultimately all of that decision making isn't necessarily up to the local judges either. So
I would feel remiss in the many people I was thanking in this conversation about how this pivot happened. I left the sheriff's office off. And that's key in this process. If we're going to continue doing these kinds of things in the future, the sheriff's office does not have necessarily the staff or the equipment to sustain this long term. And so I do think that's one of the things that we need to talk about is how is the sheriff's office able to, if this is the direction we're headed for the future, how can they continue to best provide this service? Because we all did this without really any change in personnel or budget to make it happen.
This is Pam. From a probation standpoint, it's been great for our staff, but it's also been incredible for our clients. It's so less disruptive for someone to be able to attend a hearing versus over their phone than to drive from their job, take time off, come to a hearing. It's just been much more client-centered in terms of folks being able to access court without having to take time off.
And could I just ask for clarification, Sarah? And maybe this is for Sheriff Armbrister too. Are you saying that that the sheriff's office is going to need more infrastructure itself to make it happen, or more staff, multiple things? I guess I'm trying to make sure I have a conception of what would actually need to be added to make some of these changes permanent.
I don't mean to speak for the sheriff, and obviously, and this is all very preliminary, but it takes personnel to make sure that person appears on video. That is personnel that was not there or doing that job ahead of time. It takes technology, robust technology, and robust internet to make those things happen, and particularly at the scale we're talking about. So, if we're talking about dozens of people a day, it's going to take more, iPads, laptops, cameras, those kinds of things, and the staff that really know how to operate that and manage it. So when, like everyone's Zoom call dies through this entire process, when that happens in the middle of a hearing, what do we do? How do we get that person back online? How do we continue that very important procedure? And please, I just wanted to clarify my thoughts. I didn't mean to speak for you, Sheriff Armbrister.
No, that's great. Darren, yeah, you're absolutely right. And we've already got a lot of things in place to where we can just have the folks who are housed in, say, let's just use for an example. And to give you context, say there's an inmate who's housed in our medium pod unit. So they have an individual cell where they have their own, everything is, there's only one person in a room. And inside of in that room, obviously there's a great big room. And we can't have the hearings somewhere where we could just, where they would be seen, heard, somehow violate their rights to their trial and to their court hearing and to their attorney. So we're having to try to figure out ways to get them maybe not out of the housing unit, but somewhere secure within the housing unit and then we provide them with the iPad and the technology where they can speak with their attorney or they can have the hearing separately. But like she was saying, that just takes extra personnel. So the people who are operating the housing unit can't do it because they still have a housing unit to run. And I've spoken with the judge about maybe even having the courts have somebody out there that works on only that, and then we assign somebody to them to where you have a team that just goes around and handles these throughout the day. But the infrastructure is getting there. But it's just a matter of making sure that it keeps all of their rights intact, because the last thing we want to do is screw something up and get a case thrown out or kicked back to the courts, and that just prolongs everything and just screws everybody up. So we're just trying to, you really kind of have one shot at it, and we're trying to do it the right way the first time.
And I'll just say, Gary Bunting probably got tired of hearing from me about questions of technology upgrades and how we can improve that. I recognize there's some, I don't know if infrastructure is the right thing, but there's some resources that are part of this. But overall, compliments to the sheriff's office on how they ran it. I think reducing the need to transport people from the jail to the courthouse for those 5-minute hearings is a tremendous benefit in a lot of ways as well. So overall, I think it's given us things to think about how to improve, and their improvements as far as I'm concerned for the most part.
Thank you, Judge. Do we have any additional questions for the judge? Seeing none, I think we'll move on to the next item, which is the implicit bias training. Mike, did you want to start that conversation?
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. So I can stop taking notes for a second to talk. So many of you were able to participate in 2 trainings that we offered in December. The first was the GARE Advancing Racial Equity, the Role of Government training. And then also specific for the council was the implicit bias training with Loretta Summers from the Summers Group. And so I was hoping we have just a short discussion about your feedback from those trainings. And the direction I'm looking at is we've budgeted some money aside to be able to offer, hopefully 4 to 6 trainings in this calendar year for your staff to be able to attend, especially staff members working in the criminal justice system. And so I wanted your feedback on which training you thought would be most valuable to people working in the criminal justice system. And so I'll let you guys make comments from there.
Well, I know my staff this is Pam again. My staff has expressed a lot of interest in attending that kind of training. So really anything we can offer, especially I think it'd be a great opportunity to do with other departments in the criminal justice system so that staff can network and learn about what other people are doing. I think it would be ideal. So I would love to have my staff participate in any of those trainings.
Yeah, this is Stacy Simmons. Yeah, I agree with Pam. It was a great training we sat through on that Saturday with Miss Summer. So, and it doesn't matter if it's a captain or corrections officer, that training is for everyone. So if that's an opportunity for us, we would love to take it.
And Under Sheriff Simmons, you're already utilizing Loretta Summers for training?
We are. We do the county biased or harassment in the workplace training with her.
Oh, okay.
So we have those here, and then anybody from the county for the year that needs it can come in for our corrections academy. So we're familiar with her already. She's great. She's a great instructor.
I guess the only question I would ask is, I felt like that there might be some value to the generalized training that like GARE offered first. If you didn't have exposure, I think we all, I just don't know if, should more of a training program be developed, or is that not really important? Is it just kind of, the more the better, whatever you get is great. And I'm not an expert on this. So I would defer to other people's opinions about this. Is there, and just as we look to try to train other individuals, it seemed to me that they were similar, but not the same. Maybe you need both. Maybe you need one first and then the other one. I'd just be interested in people's feedback.
So I attended Loretta's training, and I thought she was a fantastic presenter. I think my recommendation is the latter, Sarah, which is any and all training is great that we can get. And, when it comes to this kind of training and the topic itself, I think there's different ways to go about it. I'm not really sure there's a cohesive way of presenting and talking about it. I think what's important is that we talk about it and that we continue to have training and that we show that we care about it and that we're doing it. So variety is good. Sometimes people have different perspectives on it. And I think it's constantly evolving. So it's one of those, for me, it seems like it's not really kind of so much a plan as it is. I mean, it's a plan and a sort of commitment to having it, but just taking advantage of the opportunities and inviting people there for the training. And I mean, I think what could be important is maybe synthesizing at some point, having a forum where we can all synthesize what we've learned so far in these various trainings and takeaways and that kind of thing. But that's just sort of my take.
Lori, do you have a comment?
I just was going to say some of us for licensing requirements have implicit bias training that we take regularly for our staffing. It's required for our state license and for federal funding. And I'm wondering if there might be some things that we're offering that we could be more specific or more intentional about opening up to other groups. I'm not saying that we do it exactly right. I'm saying we have to do it. And there are certain pieces that have to be included for our licensing requirements. So I will also think about how do we maybe offer, as we're offering, open up seats that might be helpful, just another way to get some information. And we still, I mean, we will participate in county work. We will still have to do what's required by our funders. So if we could find a way to maybe move those resources more effectively through other partners, we can certainly take a look at that.
Thanks, Lori. Bob, I see your hand up there.
I wanted to offer two things. One, an individual observation from the perspective of somebody who went through both trainings. And that is that I think when you compared the GARE training with Ms. Summers' presentation, the GARE team approach, I think, had some advantages because it allowed us to break out and have more conversation with each other in a facilitated way over time. And I think that's really valuable. And then my second thought is, I think many of us, as Lori was speaking to, are going through this type of training in our agencies or what have you. I would love, to Sarah's point, to see us have implicit bias at the 201 and 301 level. I think because some of us are, maybe it's not a great use of our time at this point to continue to go through 2 or 3 of kind of same baseline level training. So I think to really take a look at this and kind of have a full ongoing approach that allows people to continue to grow and to allow the conversations to get deeper and more substantive in our work, I think would be really helpful. And my comment about the team is on the GARE team versus the implicit bias training. It's not a critique of one or the other. I just think the team approach allows itself to have a more engaging interactive training when you're trying to manage a Zoom sort of thing. We did the same sort of approach with the Zero Suicide Academy. And again, it was very interactive because there was a team of presenters. So I know there's expense issues and those types of things, but from the person who went through both, I felt like the first experience was, I thought I learned more about my colleagues and conversations with my colleagues.
Go ahead, Darren.
I was just going to say that I wanted to co-sign Sarah's question, since I know your initial question, Mike, was to actual office holders and people who are running departments. So it just seemed to me, after taking the training, it felt as if we're going to, we know that as an entire ecosystem, we need to continue the engagement. It sounds like trying to figure out from everyone what that actual next engagement need is. I just wanted to really say that seemed really important. And to Bob's previous point, I appreciated, I didn't get to do the GARE training, but I appreciated Midsummer's presentation. And I think there's a lot more at the next level that we're ready to move it, to lean into some discomfort on, I would actually say is probably necessary. Because I think there were a lot of things by the end of it that we're like, oh yeah, got it. When we're talking about the advocating that this body or advising this body is here to do, I think some of it is going to require sitting into some of those higher level advanced things that really help us to analyze the network and the system of criminal justice in Douglas County, where we might be doing things right, but where we might be missing things. And that requires sitting into some of those more uncomfortable, higher level discussions. That's my reaction.
Thank you for saying that, Darren. And that's what I guess, yeah, I would really, I don't know if it's the racial minorities work group that could, or if there is a work group that could go back and sort of study, like, what is that 2.0? I mean, what is the next level that this body needs to do while we continue to offer baseline training to people in organization and departments and agencies? But I guess I would really, I agree. I was ready to have that next level conversation, and I don't want us to lose that momentum.
And so for the sake of time, one thing is we'll have some further presentations on, that GARE training was just the first of what will probably be 8 meetings this year, along with really evaluating the DA's programs and policies with the racial equity toolkit. I think that's going to add some to the next level, and there will be a couple of broad trainings in that project as well. But if I summarize what I'm hearing right now is one is both trainings have benefits, and so I hope I'm hearing that to go ahead and work on scheduling to utilize both trainings throughout this year. And I just want to make sure that there's a commitment to as possible to send staff, especially for the agencies who don't have high staff numbers, and it's a real significant commitment. And then also that we work together on developing a plan for continuing to help us and our employees continue to advance in this learning. Darren's shaking his head yes, so at least one person has.
Yeah, I think it's good.
And yeah, thanks, Mike. And I think that's obviously with folks that get a lot of funding from the county, that's something we can easily that we can do. I guess I would like to hear from like Lawrence and the other cities in terms of if your staff are going to want to be accessing this, if you're going to want to do something else. I just think we need to continue to have those conversations just so that we can continue this work in the community. And we don't have to do that now, but at some point in time in the future.
I think that sounds great.
And lastly, I'll leave an invitation. We do have a City of Lawrence, Douglas County GARE team that meets monthly. And any of you or your staff who have great interest in this area are very welcome to join us, because that team, I think, will be laying a lot of the foundation for a strategic plan moving forward. And so you're welcome to jump in. I believe we meet a second or third Friday at 1 o'clock. That's off the top of my head. So please let me know, or let Jill Jolliker know, or Casey Toomey at the city, and we'll move again.
Sounds great. Thank you. The next portion of our meeting is comments, suggestions, or recommendations. Do we have anybody that's viewing this that has anything they want to add or ask? Do you see anything out there, Mike?
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. I don't see anything in the chat section.
All right, seeing none. Oh, go ahead.
No, no attendees have raised their hand or anything.
Okay. Well, seeing none, well, for the good of the order, we'll adjourn today. Thank you very much, everyone, for participating.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.